What is up, everyone? My name is Jack Zaffel, back again with another WrestleMania review, and today I'm here with my WrestleMania VIII review. This WrestleMania takes place at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we start things off with Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan on commentary, who were a great combination, by the way. They would pretty much commentate throughout the entire show, and Reba McEntire sings the national anthem at WrestleMania VIII, and then we kick things off with the opening match, El Matador, Tito Santana. For some reason, he's dressed up as a member of Los Matadores, without the stupid gimp mask thing, but he's taking on the new Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, with Sensational Sherri in his corner. This would be the first match in WrestleMania involving Shawn's Heartbreak Kid gimmick. So at the start of the year, the Rockers broke up, and he threw Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window on Brutus Beefcake's talk show, and both men here in this match, they worked pretty good between each other. They were both very high-paced athletes, high-flying kind of talents between the two. So Tito went to scoop slam him back into the ring, but then Shawn held to the ropes and pinned him to win his first singles match in WrestleMania history. So obviously Shawn goes on to do much bigger things at the next few WrestleManias. WrestleMania 9, I don't think he has his big breakthrough match. WrestleMania 10's it, but you know what? Not a bad showing, not a bad opening match for WrestleMania 8. And yeah, these two are very evenly paced. They're very even wrestlers when it comes to their type of style inside the ring. So yeah, decent way to kick off the show, and yeah, Shawn Michaels gets the win. So Mean Gene Okerlund interviews the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, alongside their longtime manager, Paul Ellering, who is now the manager for the Authors of Pain tag team. And they mention that this is the beginning of the end for the tag team division, basically, along the lines of that. And then Animal then says to Money Inc., who are defending the WWF Tag Team titles later on in the night, how it's going to feel when 75,000 people chant LOD. I don't think 75,000 people were there. I'm not sure. But they weren't wrestling on this show. They just had an interview, and that was it, because Money Inc. was facing the Natural Disasters for the championship. So, yeah, it was just weird to see them cut a promo and not even compete on the show. It was very weird. After that, we had Jake the Snake Roberts versus The Undertaker with Paul Bearer in his corner. They used to be tag partners or like former allies, but now they are enemies. And there was even one point where on the funeral parlor, which was Taker and Paul Bear's like talk show, I guess, he locked The Undertaker's hand inside of a coffin and DDT'd Paul Bear right in front of The Undertaker. So apparently this was meant to be Jake Roberts' last match, as he wanted to be a writer for WWF due to Pat Patterson stepping down as a writer at the time. But Vince didn't want to give him the job out of respect for Pat Patterson. And then he even held someone up backstage saying, you know, I get released or I'm not wrestling The Undertaker, due to his dad being over at WCW at the time, and they were offering a big sum of money to come over. So that's what ended up happening after this match. He leaves the WWF for a bit and then goes to WCW. So the match itself was okay. So Jake DDT's Undertaker, but he sits up, which was a big shock at the time, because usually when you get hit with that DDT, it's all over, basically. So to see someone just sit up and like basically no-sell the DDT. Obviously, you see that shit all the time nowadays, but like back in 1992, that was a big deal. And he gets clotheslined and gets hit with another DDT, but he sits up again. And then Roberts goes over to Paul Bearer outside the ring, but then Taker grabs him and hits the Tombstone Piledriver on the outside padding to get his second WrestleMania victory. And this would just like I said in the WrestleMania 7 review, this would just be the start of a long series of matches where Undertaker would just never lose. Obviously at this time, they had no idea that they were going to build this tremendous streak. It's something that just kind of happened after a few wins. So yeah, Undertaker looked really good in this match. especially from like no selling the DDTs. I know, at the time, I don't know how people felt about that at the time. If it kind of hurt the feeling of the move, I guess, which I guess that kind of makes sense since everyone just hits DDTs out of nowhere now. But after that, we get a fantastic match for the Intercontinental Championship. Roddy Piper defending against Bret the Hitman Hart. Yes, Roddy Piper was actually Intercontinental Champion. I think he beat the Mountie at Royal Rumble that year or in another event. And I remember before the match, both men were interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund. And Piper references how he's known Bret since he was little, and how his mom would used to like make sandwiches for him, and how he was potty trained until he was the age of 7 and all that. But then Hart, because he's all serious and all that, Piper's trying to have a bit of a laugh and all that. But Bret Hart, he's very serious and focused about the match, and he's only focused on gaining the Intercontinental Championship. So the two get a bit heated and get in each other's face for a little bit, but because these two were both baby faces at the time. Piper wasn't a heel, Bret Hart wasn't a heel. They were both very popular with the crowd, but they were still extremely vicious with each other in this match. Like, Piper was spitting at Hart when he flipped him out of the ring out of frustration. There was a running bulldog on Bret Hart, and then Bret Hart, so he blades. Well, Bret Hart says that it was hard way, that he bled hard way, but it looked like he bladed inside the ring, which is funny because Vince McMahon actually wanted this to be a blood-free WrestleMania. He didn't want any blood involved, so Bret blades, and apparently he didn't get anything for it. He just walked off fine. So Bret went for a top rope axe handle, but Piper puts his boot up, and then they slug it out for a bit before Bret gets shoved into the ref. And so Piper grabs the ring bell and goes to hit Bret with it, but then the crowd begs him, like, no, don't hit him with it. And so he hesitates. He's thinking for a bit, should I do it on Bret? But he throws the ring bell away, and then will eventually lock in the sleeper hold on him. So I thought that was great character development for Roddy Piper, because if that would have happened in like 1984 or 1985, he would have done that in a heartbeat. But Piper's a changed man. He's not the vicious, crazy heel that he was in the mid-'80s. He's changed a lot since going to Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. So Piper locked in the sleeper hold on Bret, but how Bret got out of it was he kicks his feet on the turnbuckles and turns over on top of Piper to get a pinfall victory. Great ending, by the way. Very creative pinfall attempt by Bret Hart. And he wins the Intercontinental Championship as Piper wraps the belt around Hart's waist. So bit of respect between the two there. Yeah, awesome match. One of the best Intercontinental title matches in the history of WrestleMania, in my opinion. I loved how, even though these two guys were technically good guys and they both respected each other and the sportsmanship inside the ring, they would not hesitate in this match to just go full on at each other. I mean, just even the blood itself. I did feel like the blood was a little bit unnecessary. I mean, if there was no blood in this match, it wouldn't affect it at all. But, nothing wrong with it as well. But the match itself was just great. A big highlight of this show for me. So after that, we get to Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. They're in the commentary box, and they interview via satellite World Bodybuilding Federation star, the Total Package Lex Luger. So Lex Luger had become a huge name in WCW before coming over to the WWF or the World Bodybuilding Federation, which, for those of you, or some of the younger fans that may not know what the World Bodybuilding Federation was, Vince tried to start his own bodybuilding federation. I don't know why. I do know why, because we all know Vince has a fascination with big, sweaty men. So this was just a whole federation of big sweaty men. And if I had to sum up the WBF in one video, it would have to be this.
Here he comes, Gary Stridham. Wow!
Yeah, good old Gary Stridham, man. But Luger, he's definitely playing up his arrogance a lot. You know, he thanks Heenan for interviewing him and refers to Gorilla as the fat guy on commentary, and he even flexes for a bit and drinks a glass of milk in one go, and he's basically just acting like an egotistical twat. But it was great. It was definitely the start of his narcissist character, which he would debut sometime next year, when it was revealed after the WBF crashed and failed tremendously. After that, we had a 8-man tag team match. The Nasty Boys, Repo Man, and the Mountie, with Jimmy Hart in their corner, taking on Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Virgil, Sergeant Slaughter, and the Big Boss Man. So yeah, Sergeant Slaughter, who was the big bad guy heel last year at WrestleMania VII, well, he wanted his country back after a little bit after the match. He had some reflecting to do. I think this was like after SummerSlam as well. Had a bit of reflecting to do, and how he wanted his country back and how he wanted to be back with the US and all that stuff. So now he's babyface again, gone back to classic Sergeant Slaughter. And the host of Family Feud at the time, Ray Combs, was the special guest ring announcer for the match, and he uses his surveys, kind of like if you ever watched Family Feud, they would like 100 names were. So 100 people were asked for the survey and all that. So he would run down the heels in like a survey type way on Family Feud just to make fun of them. And the heels got pissed off and tried to go after him, but then the faces dragged them away. And it was an okay match, but it kind of turned into a clusterfuck at the end, and the babyfaces eventually went over. So yeah, great. And then after that, we had another fantastic match for the WWF Championship. The Nature Boy, Ric Flair, with Mr. Perfect in his corner. I think Mr. Perfect was injured at the time, taking on the Macho Man, Randy Savage. So this match was meant to be, the WWF title match was meant to be Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. That was the big money match everyone was expecting at WrestleMania VIII. But to circumstances, whether it be, you know, Hogan or Flair's politicking or something along the lines of that, that just didn't end up happening. And instead we got two main events, one of which was the Ric Flair Savage match, which we'll be talking about, and the actual main event match of Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice. So the storyline for this match was Ric Flair had come into the WWF and was proclaiming himself as the real world's champion, and so the WWF title was vacated, I believe, and it was up for grabs in the 1992 Royal Rumble match, and he ended up winning it, and in what many consider to be the best Royal Rumble match of all time, Ric Flair won the WWF title in the match, and then he started going after Miss Elizabeth, and he started using doctored photos of Miss Elizabeth, and it was basically, he would take photos with her and Randy Savage, and he would cut out Randy Savage from the photo and replace him with it. So this really pissed off the Macho Man, as he should be pissed off for messing around with his girl. And Ric Flair even said that if he retained the championship, he would release a special private photo of him and Elizabeth on the big screen at the Hoosier Dome. So I'm guessing him and Elizabeth fucking or something like that. So Savage ends up running to the ring. He has fury in his eyes and he's just chasing after Ric Flair. And this match was perfect proof of why Ric Flair is one of the all-time greatest heels. Any dirty, underhanded tactic he could use, he went for. There's a reason he's called the dirtiest player in the game, which is good because it was a great contrast of styles. Ric Flair was, yeah, the dirtiest player in the game, doing whatever he can to just win the match by all means necessary, while Macho Man's fuel and hatred for Ric Flair for messing with his girl, basically, fueled him to just keep pushing through and to win the match and just kind of overcome every obstacle Ric Flair put in front of him, I guess. So, like I mentioned in the Bret Hart Roddy Piper match, Mr. McMahon didn't want any blood on this show. So Bret Hart's, like I said before, was supposedly hard way, and he kind of got off without any punishment. Ric Flair actually blades in front of the camera, and he actually got punished for it. I think he got fined for it. So poor Ric Flair, he ends up getting caught for it instead of Bret Hart. And he receives a double axe handle from the top to the outside, and then a suplex on the padding. And then Savage hits the flying elbow, but then when he goes for the pin, Perfect grabs him right before 3. And the referee at one point during the match is caught between the two as Mr. Perfect then passes Flair, I believe, some brass knuckles, and he hits Savage with them, but he manages to still kick out. And then Perfect hits Savage with a steel chair while the ref's not seeing, and Miss Elizabeth, who was watching backstage, she's had enough and she runs out there. There's a bunch of people trying to stop Elizabeth from getting involved. Even Shane McMahon was one of the people as well. That was before he became an on-screen character. And Elizabeth runs out, and while Flair aims at Savage's leg to lock in the figure 4 on him, which is good strategy. So Flair holds on to Perfect's arm during the hold, but then the ref kicks the connection they had, and Savage manages to fight out of it. And how this all ended was Savage ended up rolling Ric Flair up to win the WWF Championship, and Ric Flair was fuming. He was pissed off that he lost. He was saying that, oh, he grabbed my tights and everything, which is funny considering just the hypocrisy of someone like Ric Flair giving him shit for doing a underhanded move to win when Ric Flair was basically doing all that stuff the entire match, which makes me love it even more. It's just perfect fuel for his character. And so he goes over to Elizabeth. By the way, half his face is just covered in blood, and forces a kiss on her. Elizabeth then just keeps slapping the piss out of Ric Flair, and the two brawl for a bit. Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect try to attack Randy Savage, but they pussy out of the ring, and Savage celebrates with Elizabeth because celebrating with his new WWF Championship. Fantastic match. Definitely one of the best WWF Championship matches in WrestleMania history, in my opinion. I love the build-up going into it with Ric Flair trying to get under Randy Savage's skin by going after Miss Elizabeth and them having a affair, according to him. And the match itself had a purpose. Ric Flair was a great heel and Randy Savage was a great babyface. So that dynamic was just perfect. And also, Ric Flair finally getting what he had coming to him by losing the WWF title to Randy Savage. So yeah, great stuff overall. But honestly, after that match, there was nothing really that noteworthy. They could, in my opinion, that should have been the main event. That would have been a great way to end the show. But we had 4 other matches after this. One of them being the model Rick Martel taking on Tatanka. And because Tatanka's gimmick was like he was a Native American type warrior guy, he had the support of the Native Americans who were dancing in the ring before the match. And Tatanka wins the match with a flying high crossbody move to win. So, yeah, great win for Tatanka. After that was the Tag Team Championship match, Money Inc. defending against the Natural Disasters, Earthquake and Typhoon. I never knew the Natural Disasters were babyfaces. I did not know that. I always thought they were heels for the longest time. I knew Jimmy Hart was in their corner, but I think they kind of had a falling out with him, so that caused them to be babyfaces. And I'll be honest with you, I could not be asked to watch this match at all. Nothing major took place as the Natural Disasters won by disqualification, so that match was honestly just a throwaway. Speaking of another throwaway match, Owen Hart, the Rocket Owen Hart, that was before he became the King of Hearts in his heel gimmick, faced
Skinner?
No, not that Skinner, some weird croc hunting guy. Owen Hart wins with a roll-up in a minute-and-a-half match, and yeah, awesome. Then we get to the main event. Oh boy, Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice, with Harvey Wippleman in Sid Justice's corner. He even did a bit of ring announcing before the match for some reason. So at the WrestleMania VIII press conference, it was announced that Hulk Hogan would be the #1 contender for the WWF title against Ric Flair, which made Sid upset, saying it was like the most bogus move that WWF president Jack Tunney ever made, because Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan were kind of friends at the time. And so a week later on Saturday night's main event, Hogan and Sid teamed up against Ric Flair and The Undertaker. And then Hogan tried to get the tag. Sid just basically walked out on Hogan. And then the next day on the Wrestling Challenge show on Beefcake's Barbershop, he grabbed a steel chair because Brutus Beefcake and Hulk Hogan were friends even in real life. And he grabbed the steel chair and just destroyed his set. Just smashed down the window. Destroyed the entire set as well. And then he went on this path of destruction. He beat a bunch of jobbers leading into the match, and because Hogan was starting to cross over into Hollywood, this was being billed as possibly Hogan's last match. However, in a sit-down interview with Vince McMahon, he said himself that he wasn't even sure if this was going to be it for him. Obviously it was not, because he shows up at next year's WrestleMania, and oh god, can't wait to talk about next year's WrestleMania. So yeah, Sid started going after Hogan like even during his entrance, but Hogan manages to attack back, even like when his music's still playing. Him and Sid fight for a bit, and this was just your typical Hulk Hogan match. The heel gets the upper hand at the start, and then Hogan does his typical Hulk up at the end, hits the body slam and the leg drop, all that jazz. But then Sid kicks out of the leg drop as Harvey runs in to attack Hogan, causing a disqualification victory for Hogan. Let me get this straight. There is a DQ victory in the main event of WrestleMania. Are you fucking kidding me? Whoever booked that, mate, better have gotten fired. Okay, so this may have been an on-the-fly move, because Papa Shango was meant to run into the ring and attack Hogan, causing the DQ victory for him. But the dickhead missed his cue, so Sid had to kick out of the leg drop. He was meant to show up as soon as Hogan hit that leg drop, but he missed his cue and then attacked Hogan after the match alongside Sid. And while Hogan was getting beat down, the Ultimate Warrior makes his return after a brief absence from the company. He wasn't exactly on good terms with the WWF at the time, and Hogan and Warrior fight off the other two heels as they celebrate in the ring as we close the show. So the match of the night for me, I'm going to have to give it to the WWF title match between Randy Savage and Ric Flair. Great story, great in-ring action, and pretty good ending, I'd say. Runner-up would definitely be Piper and Hart for the IC title. Those would be the two matches you'd have to watch on this show. How I'm going to rate this show, I'm going to give this show 6.5 out of 10, because I felt like this was a lot easier to watch than some of the other previous WrestleManias, because it was only 3 hours, this WrestleMania. I don't have a problem with WrestleManias being 4 hours, because, it's WrestleMania, fair enough. But it's just these early WrestleManias where it's full of filler matches and not much happens. It was nice to see WWF kind of tone that down for a bit and actually have matches that kind of matter. Well, in the first half anyway. The second half didn't really have much of that. But overall, it was a pretty alright show. Pretty decent show at that. For WrestleMania. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, Comment down below your thoughts on WrestleMania 8, and if you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. You'd be glad you did. Twitter and Instagram is at JackmanLove31 if you want to check me out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm out in 3, 2, 1.